I just briefly wanted to tell you a little bit about the history of the Names Project and where we're going and what happened. You have to sort of back up to 1985 in cities like San Francisco and New York and Houston, Texas, Los Angeles, where the devastation was just amazingly horrible in the gay community. And also, as you looked around, people weren't talking about AIDS. People were caring for people in isolation, something you all are aware of, not letting your neighbors knowing what was going on. Cleve Jones responded to this very quickly by saying, we need a memory, a soft, comforting memory. And he came up with the quilt. He designed the first panel for Marvin Feldman and made it 3 foot by 6, the size of a body. The word went out across the country, and in 1987, 1,920 panels were displayed on the mall in Washington. That was the first time I saw the quilts laid out. For me personally, I was there and I was putting down those panels in anger. I felt no one cared about this disease. No one cared that these people and my friends were dying. And as I stood there crying, a little old woman, about 70 years old, walked up to me and hugged me and said, my son's panel is with your friend. And I want you to know it's okay, we're with you. And she was holding me. And as we sat and talked on the ground and chatted, I realized for the first time that people do care, and that's the way we can fight this disease.
And what we did is we started off early in the day and unpacked boxes. A couple of us were there about 2 o'clock in the afternoon that Friday. And then we had the rally and brought in pizza, and people were all fired up about it. And we actually had a large number of volunteers stay and work through into the evening with us. And what was neat is to see it slowly going up. And like I'd leave for a few minutes and I'd come back and there'd be so many more panels up. It was just amazing. And to just slowly watch that transformation. You know, this is an athletic facility with sterile walls and bleachers, and then these panels would be added and added and added. And by the time all the hanging panels were hung, it was just almost smothering, which I think is the effect we wanted. But it was really amazing just to see that happen. And in reality, it only took about 2.5 hours from the time we first started hanging panels until we finished hanging the last panel, and we had the walkway laid out complete.
With the total setup, I was kind of observing from the background. I was very busy with a lot of the people who were turning in their new panels. So we were trying to organize the operation for them to bring their new panels in, set up the organization of when somebody brought a new panel in, exactly what we should do with those panels, tagging all the panels that we had worked on, because I had asked for a lot of the panels to be brought in prior to the opening so we could display them. Instead of having them brought in and just kind of put someplace until the new panel dedication, we wanted to display them, and we ended up putting them up in the lobby area. So any new panel that would come in would then be added to the new panels before the dedication.
It's just overwhelming, actually, to think. I was commenting to my daughter to think that when you see movies on television, there are all those actors that are portraying AIDS, but these are real people, and I think that's what's very moving for me personally.
I think it's terrific that it's here, and I feel bad because there are people who stand in judgment and make it rather difficult for the people, the families. I belong to hospice, and we all, what bothers me is I have older people whom I'm a volunteer for, and these are all such young people. They're so young.
I too would like to welcome you here today on what is a very special time for this university. To be very truthful, I'm proud of Ashland University and its willingness to embrace this project and get involved in it to the degree that it has, with a tremendous amount of volunteerism, spirit, and support for something which has the potential of having a tremendous impact on this community, not just the students and staff of the university, but for the citizens of Ashland and the surrounding area as well. This is an opportunity for many of us to increase our level of consciousness and awareness of a tremendous disease that is threatening our nation. The lives that are represented in these quilts and the lives represented by the families of these individuals who are gathered here today represents something which should have a very great impact on each and every one of us. That we are facing in this country a situation that requires commitment, education, determination, and resolve if we are going to beat the AIDS disease. As you walk around this room and as you hear the names expressed today, keep in mind that these are men and women, boys and girls who have died in vain if we do not learn from their lives and from their deaths. That we can commit ourselves as a nation and as individuals to be more determined and committed than ever, that the number of quilts that will be added over the years will be fewer and fewer until this becomes just an historical event. Thank you for being here today. Take away from this place your own personal resolve to help encourage and educate everyone out there about this disease and its impact. Thank you for being here today.
We will now begin with the reading of the names.
Tony Cox, Cliff Counts,
Paul Page, Peter Harsty,
Stephen D. Caskey, Christopher Emmon,
Roger Lovell, Robert S. Volus,
Chuck, Tony Benvenuto, Bruce W. Bilge,
Michael Allen Ford, James Morrison,
K.S., Ryan Sorrells, Robert Gray, Greg Smith,
Robert Sams, John Ritchie Richards,
Rick Emery, Ray Grates,
E.L., Sister Reed, Robert Lesko.
I do. My brother Tim Richmond, and his was just dedicated today. And I do think it's a wonderful thing, and hopefully that people came here today that are really not as aware as they should be about it, or as knowledgeable as they should be, and maybe it will help educate more people, give people more understanding, not be so closed-minded about this disease, because we're all very susceptible to it if we're not aware.
I don't know anybody. I am very impressed with this, and I think it's wonderful that it's come here. It's done a lot for the university, I know, and hopefully for the community as well. Make us more aware of the problem. Actually, it went more smoothly than I thought it would. As I said before, the load-in went pretty quick, and so it was up and together fairly early on Friday night, and then with the breakfast on Saturday morning, we had a lot of people go with us to the opening ceremony, so the room was packed for the opening ceremony, and that went off almost without a flaw, and just people milling all day those first 2 days. So by the time Monday rolled around, I think emotionally we were rather drained, and we still had a whole day of people coming in and school children coming in, and so that was really neat to see this flurry of activity the first 2 days, and then as it kind of slowed down through Monday, and I think allowed us to slow down with it and to begin to realize what an enormous project it was.
I think people's reactions were definitely changed after having an opportunity to view it. There were some people that were very skeptical. They came, had an opportunity to see it, and I think it made a lasting impression on them. We weren't trying to change anybody's opinion. We were trying to educate people and make them aware, and I think we did that, and I think we did it very well.
I'll never forget seeing the quilt for the first time. I was one of the 500,000 men, women, and children who gathered on the green grass of the mall for the National Gay and Lesbian March on Washington in October 1987. Out of curiosity, I decided to walk over and have a look at this giant quilt for AIDS that had been unfurled that autumn morning. I meandered among the hundreds of colorful panels, impressed and quietly moved by the scope and originality of the memorial. Then I happened upon a panel made by a child for her older brother, a stranger to me, and I was moved to tears. My friends had to lead me away. It was the first time I had been able to cry for a friend's loss, for friends I feared I would someday lose, for myself, for all of us. Come to think of it, it was the first time I had cried in years. I'm grateful for that healing moment. In the 4 years since, I've seen the quilt do its essential work many times. A decade into the AIDS epidemic, the quilt has visited our nation's capital 4 times and continues to take its message of compassion and consolation around the country and to the world, providing adults and children a way to talk about AIDS, loss, and love. For those who have lost someone they love, the quilt is a place to put the memories, and a place to do something in the face of an awful helplessness. It touches the suffering, the bereaved, the fearful, and it touches those who had previously felt unaffected by AIDS. No one leaves the quilt unmoved.